COVID crisis going on. Many of us are working from home. Many of you cannot. You have to be on the job. I know there are Sheriff's Department folks on this call. You can't very well work from home, can you? We've got some road and bridge folks on this call. They've got to be out there doing the work. We've got people who go to work in offices and they're dealing with the public in courthouses and so forth. And you're exposing yourself to whatever virus might be out there. So even in the best of times, you folks are our heroes, and especially right now. We appreciate you all so much. And we're trying to help you have that retirement that you deserve. Many of you are also loggers employees, L-A-G-E-R-S, and that's a separate pension plan. And so you folks will have two pensions, but I'm only going to talk about the CERF pension. Loggers is a great plan. I encourage you to contact them if you're in Loggers. In fact, I know they are doing a webinar tomorrow at 1 p.m. So you might contact Loggers if you're a Loggers employee. But I'm going to focus on the CERF pension. And then as Connie said, we'll take a little break. And then Robert will talk about the CERF savings. And he's also going to talk about some other really important issues that affect all retirees. Let's go to the first slide, please. There we go. So the goal of any pension plan is to give you a pension. You have to work long enough to become vested, and vested means you've earned the benefit, in this case a pension plan. So you're vested in CERF with 8 consecutive years with your county. That's 8 years in a row at 1,000 hours a year. At that point, you're going to get some kind of a pension. We pay full benefits at age 62. You could retire as early as 55 at a reduced amount. But the formulas that we calculate pay the full amount at 62. So the formula looks at how long did you work and how much did you earn, and it spits out a number. And at 62 or older, you would get that entire number. If you took it prior to 62, you would get a fraction of that, with the earliest being 55. As long as you've got those 8 years in, you could retire at 55, but you would get less per month from your CERF pension. I talked about loggers a little bit earlier. They're a separate plan. They're governed by separate statutes. They do contribute a little less to the CERF pension, so when the time comes to draw their retirement, they will get a little less from their CERF pension. But we have run some numbers and looked at people, and loggers folks still come out ahead of the game because they do have 2 pensions. Their CERF may be a little less than their non-loggers counterparts, but overall, they're still coming out ahead of the game because they do have 2 pensions, whereas non-loggers people just have the CERF pension. Go to the next slide, please. Robert's going to touch on the RMD, the required minimum distribution, a little bit later on. But for the pension side, if you have retired and for whatever reason you have not started drawing your pension, you do have to start when the required minimum distribution age kicks in. And that just became 72. It used to be 70 and a half. And at the beginning of 2020, a federal law changed, and now it's 72. So you have to at least start taking your pension then. Certainly you could take it as early as 55 as long as you're vested at that time. Next slide, please. So we're going to run 3 formulas for all CERF participants. The formula looks at how long did you work and how much did you earn, and it spits out a number, and so that would be your pension benefit. I'm not going to go into the formulas in this PowerPoint presentation. It would be very long and complicated and dry, but the formulas are in that booklet that you should have a PDF copy of. And we do want you to know how we're arriving at these numbers. We're not just making something up. When you get a benefit estimate and you want to know how those numbers came to be, certainly call CERF, speak to a benefit specialist. They can walk you through this line by line and tell you how we arrived at these numbers. Next slide, please. So, if we did this in person, you would have registered in advance and I would hand you your benefit estimate at the presentation. Well, that's impossible to do on a webinar, but it's still important to have an idea of what your CERF pension benefit will be. So there are 3 ways that you can still do this, and I encourage you to do this one way or the other. We send an annual statement to anyone who's been in CERF at least a couple of years. And those statements come out in April. So you got one just last month. And it does contain a benefit projection for age 62. It's our best guess of what your pension will be at age 62 based on the information we have now. Now, that information could change. As you continue working, your salary might change, and that would change that benefit projection. But the one that we send you in April of each year is dated December 31 of the previous calendar year, and it includes salary information up to that point. So we're using our best guess based on that information. Again, it defaults to age 62. Now, you may be thinking of retiring at a different age, and that's fine. You can call our benefits specialist and have them run one for another age if you like. Or you can go to our website, mocerf.org, and run a benefit projection on yourself. It's fairly easy to do. You would go to mocerf.org, you'd click on Member Portal. If you have never registered on the portal, you will need to do that and set up your password. So you'd click Register, and there is a point in the registration process where we're going to ask you your member ID number. You don't have that, but we do. So call our office, 877-632-2373, and we will provide that member ID, and we'll stay on the line with you if you'd like and help you get registered onto the member portal. And then you can run a benefit projection for yourself. You can run more than one for yourself. If you want to see, let's say, what if I retire at 62 versus 65? How would that affect my pension? So you can run more than one. It's easy to do. It's a great thing to do to at least have an idea of what that pension might be. Now, if you're not comfortable doing that online, the third option is you can just call our office, 877-632-2373, ask to speak to a benefit specialist who will take your info and work up an estimate and send it to you. Again, you can have more than one if you want to compare different ages. She's glad to do that for you. But one of these 3 ways, we would really encourage you to have a benefit, an idea of what your benefit will be with your CERF pension. That's going to make everything else so much easier. If you're in loggers, I would encourage you to contact loggers. Call them or go to their website or dig out one of their most recent statements. And again, get an idea of what your logger's pension will be. Robert's going to talk about Social Security in the second half of this, but it's a good idea to know what your Social Security benefit will be also. more pieces of the puzzle you have in front of you, the better you'll know if you're making good decisions regarding when to retire, how to start dipping into that savings plan, and so forth. Let's go to the next slide, please. So 30 to 90 days in advance of your last day of work, call our office and speak to a benefit specialist. We need to get some paperwork going, and we need a little lead time to get everything going so that we can get you your pensions when you want them to start coming. It may take a couple of months to get everything going, so that's why we need a little lead time. If there's any kind of delay, you will get paid. You will get retroactive payments going back to the commencement date whenever you want the pension payments to start. But we hope that we won't have to do too many retroactive payments. We hope we can get things going when you want them started, and you do that by helping us, by giving us that lead time of 30 to 90 days. If you've already retired and you haven't started drawing your pension yet, but you want to, again, call us in advance and let us get some paperwork going for you. Next slide, please. So I'm just briefly going to show you some slides. I don't expect you to commit all these to memory, but we're going to kind of breeze through these just so you know that there are forms. I said give us some lead time so we can start the paperwork and send you the forms. So just real briefly, these are some of the forms that we're going to ask you to complete. Some you're going to complete, some the county clerk's office is going to complete, some your bank officer is going to complete. Just go to the next slide, please. There's another one that's designation of survivor. And let's go to the next slide on that, please. And you'll see here where you can decline to name a survivor. We're not saying you have to have a beneficiary when you start drawing your pension, but if you do not want one, we're going to ask you to decline that so we have a record of that. Next slide, please. Here's some electronic funds forms. And let's go to the next slide. And you can see there's a place for a signature from someone from your financial institution. Your pension payments are going to be direct deposited into your bank account, and somebody from your bank does need to sign off on that. Next slide, please. There we go. We're going to talk about taxes a little later on, but there are some tax forms that you're going to have to complete. There's a federal form. And if we go to the next slide, there's a state form. And we're going to talk more about all of this later on. I'm just trying to give you an idea of why we need some lead time so that you can get busy on your paperwork and we can have as little delay as possible when you want that pension to start. All right, let's go to the next slide. I mentioned earlier that you're vested if you've got 8 years in a row with the county and you've stopped working for your county. And you can take it as early as 55, actuarially reduced. So what that means is, all things being equal, you should get just about the same amount of pension payments throughout your lifetime. But if you start drawing it earlier in life, it would be a smaller monthly amount. If you start drawing it at 62 or later, it would be the full amount, whatever that is. But we're assuming for a fewer number of years. So as I said, there are actuarial tables that take a look at everyone's projected lifespan, and you should get roughly the same total amount from your pension, no matter when you start drawing it, either earlier in life at a smaller amount for more years, or later at a larger amount but for fewer years. Go to the next slide, please. All right, now we are going to dive into the options that you're going to have to make. And I am going to take some time on these because I do want you to understand these. You don't make a decision yet. You don't make a decision until you're off the payroll. We know there's going to be no more payroll coming in, so it will not change the amount of your benefit. Then we're going to send you a final document, and that's where you're going to say, yes, I want this option or that option. So you're not going to decide this yet, but I do want you thinking ahead because it's an important decision. The first option is the single life annuity. This is the highest amount you can get from CERF per month. It is a monthly payment for life. Upon your death, it stops. So it gets you the most money per month, but there's no extension beyond your lifetime. Once you pass away, that's it. May or may not be the best option for you. We're going to talk more about things to consider later on. But the single life annuity gets you the most money per month, but there are no beneficiaries. Upon your death, it does stop. Next slide, please. All right, if you want to allow for a beneficiary, there are a couple of ways to do that. One is the joint and survivor option. Here, you will name a survivor. Your payments would continue to you for the rest of your life. But upon your death, your beneficiary will receive either 50, 75, or 100% of what you had been receiving. And that's part of the process. You're going to say, I want the joint survivor, and I like the 50% option, or the 75% option, or the 100% option. So in other words, the 50% option, you'd get a certain amount, and upon your death, your beneficiary would receive half of that for the rest of his or her life. Or the 75% option, you would receive a certain amount. Upon your death, your beneficiary would get 75% of that. Or the 100% option, you'd each get the same amount. You would get a certain amount, and your beneficiary would get the same amount upon your passing. If you take the joint and survivor option and you outlive your survivor, well, then what happens? Do you pick a new beneficiary? No, but you would get kicked up back to the single life amount. So if your beneficiary dies first, your amount will increase because you'll be kicked back up to whatever that single life annuity would have been. So that's one way to provide for a beneficiary. Take the joint survivor option, select either 50, 75, or 100%, and you'll see the actual numbers so that you'll know how much these are. So you're making an informed decision. And you would receive that amount for the rest of your life. If you pass first, your beneficiary would receive the other amount for the rest of his or her life. But if your beneficiary passes first, you would get kicked back up to that single life annuity amount. Go to the next slide, please. So another way to allow for a beneficiary is the 10-year certain end life. This one confuses the heck out of people. I'm going to try to explain it a couple of different ways and make sure everyone understands this. The first thing to know is we're paying you for life. We're not cutting you off after 10 years. We're paying you for life. But if you were to die during those first 10 years, the remainder of those 10 years would be paid to your beneficiary. And then at the end of that period, 10 years from when you retired, the payments would stop. Now, if you continue living beyond 10 years, we're still paying you for life. But at that point, there is no longer any money left over for a beneficiary. So you're paid for life. If you die during those first 10 years, your beneficiary is paid for the remainder of those 10 years, and then the payments stop. You can name more than one beneficiary under this option. So let's say you retire, you take the 10-year certain in life, and you die 1 year after you retire. Well, there's 9 more years of payments that would go to your beneficiary. If that beneficiary died a year or two after that, there's 7 or 8 more years to be paid to somebody, to your estate. We're paying somebody for at least 10 years. We're paying you for life if you live longer than 10 years, but if you die during the first 10 years, the remainder of the 10 years would be paid to your beneficiary. That may or may not be the best option for you. Some people look at their family history and they say, quite honestly, people in my family don't live long after they retire, and they like the idea of locking in at least 10 years to be paid to somebody. So that's another way that you could allow for a beneficiary. Let's go to the next slide, please. All right, this one only applies to people who retire before age 62. It's called the level income option. This can be confusing to people too. What it does is it allows us to front load your pension payments and pay you a little more up front and a little less later on. And the magic age is 62. So if you were to retire from 55 up to 61, you could have a little more paid to your CERF benefit until age 62. Then at 62, the amount would drop off. So why are we doing this? Well, we're estimating what we think your pension and your Social Security would both add up to be. And prior to age 62, we're funding the whole thing ourselves. At 62, when Social Security can kick in, there's going to be 2 sources of income, your CERF pension and your Social Security. So we're paying the full amount prior to age 62. At 62, we're doing less of the heavy lifting because now Social Security has entered the picture and they're doing some of the benefits also. The income should stay level. It's just that prior to 62, it's all coming from CERF. After 62, it's coming from CERF and Social Security. Some people see a big drop-off, and we want you aware of that. Again, you'll see the numbers if you ask for this option. We can show you the numbers so you're making an informed decision. But it could be a serious drop-off depending on your formula, your CERF formula. Now, when it comes to the Social Security part, we're making an educated guess based on your employment with the county. You may have had other work in your lifetime not with the county, and we have no way of knowing that. We're not actually pulling any information from Social Security, but we're making a guess based on your time with the county and your income with the county, what we think your Social Security payments might be. And then prior to 62, we're funding the whole thing ourselves. And after 62, we're funding less of it because Social Security has entered the picture. Robert's going to talk more about Social Security later on. He's going to tell you that you don't have to start taking your Social Security at 62, and that's correct. Your full Social is based on your year of birth, but it wouldn't make any sense for you to take this option, excuse me, if you were not going to take your Social Security at 62. Let's go to the last slide on that section, please. And this joint and survivor and level income option combines the joint and survivor and the level income. So again, it's only for people who are going to retire before 62. You'll get a huge amount up front and a lesser amount after age 62. Some people's eyes get really big when they see the big amount prior to 62 and they select that option. And then at 62, the pension amount drops off and they call us and say, hey, what happened? Well, what happened is you turned 62. And so for the joint survivor and the joint survivor and level income options, you will see that drop off. So it may or may not be the best option for you. Maybe you're trying to pay off the house or something and you like the idea of getting a big amount up front. But know the numbers. Do the research. Let us run an estimate for you so you're not blindly guessing what your pension will be. Now, I said that you don't make any of these decisions yet, and that's true. We have to have that final payroll from the county. Then we'll send you one last document where you make a decision. But it's good to be thinking ahead. And so that's why we spend so much time on this during the presentation, because it is an important decision. And the reason it's so important is you cannot change your mind. Once you elect one of these options and you send it back to us, you cannot change your mind. And that's state statute. That's not just us being, I don't know, whimsical. That's state statute. Once you select something, you're stuck with it. The only option, as I said earlier on that joint and survivor, is if you take the joint and survivor, but your beneficiary dies first, then you would get kicked up to the single life. You wouldn't name a new beneficiary, but you would get kicked up to the single life amount. So, big decision because you cannot change your mind. We had a call a year or two ago from a gentleman who had retired many years prior, and he elected the joint and survivor, and he listed his spouse, and they've since gotten divorced. And he asked us, can I change that? And we had to say no. So it's a big decision. If he dies first, his ex-wife is going to get paid. So you cannot change your mind. That's why it's a big decision. That's why we want you aware of the options and how they work. I spent a lot of time on that because it's important. Let's go to the next slide, please. Well, here's everyone's favorite topic, right? The monthly CERF benefit payments come to you as a taxable event. The contributions you've been paying into the CERF went in on a pre-tax event, but when you start drawing your pension, it is a taxable event. We will withhold federal and Missouri income taxes at your request. So you're going to tell us, and that's one of the forms that we send you when you call us and we send you this packet. There's a federal form and a state form, and you're going to decide what do you want to do regarding federal and Missouri taxes. We can withhold some or none, it's up to you, and you can change your mind at any time. You're not locked into a decision here. It's a matter of filling out a form or going to our website and just letting us know if you want to make a change. Often people will start with one amount. After meeting their tax advisor, they'll decide they need to adjust that. So you can do that. It's easy to do with CERF. Robert's going to talk later about the implications of the CERF savings plan regarding taxes, but I'm talking about the CERF pension plan. It is a taxable event, we will withhold whatever you want from Missouri and federal taxes. You just let us know. Go to the next slide, please. All right, once you've been retired for at least a year, a cost of living adjustment goes into effect. And in the retirement business, we use the acronym of a COLA, a cost of living adjustment. And the COLA for CERF can be as much as 1%. And this last year, it was the full 1%. So you do have to be retired at least 1 year for that to kick in. And then we notify you each year when that COLA is going to kick in, and it's always July 1 of that year. Loggers has a COLA. Again, if you're in loggers, you'd want to check with them. Social Security has a COLA, but I'm talking about the CERF cost of living adjustment. It can be as much as 1%. You have to be retired at least a year, and then it goes into effect the following July 1. All right, let's go to the next slide. Once you're receiving payments from CERF, as I said, this is taxable income, and you will need to document that when you do your taxes. So we send you a form called a 1099-R, and we send that out in in January of each calendar year, and that's for the previous year. So that's showing what you received from your CERF pension during the calendar year. We get it out to you by the end of January. Some people call us on January 2, and they're ready to do their taxes. And they say, hey, where's my 1099 form? I'm ready to go. And while I admire their enthusiasm, give us a little longer to actually get the documents to you. We will have them in the mail by the end of January. They will also be on our website. If you don't get them in the mail, you've changed your address and we don't have it on file or something, you can go to the website and you can find your 1099 there. But please keep us informed if you move, because we need to know that. We get a ton of returned mail at that time each year from retirees who have moved and did not update their info with us, and the 1099 forms come back. So please keep us in the loop. Let's go to the next slide, please. This one surprises me. When I started doing these pre-retirement seminars, this was the one thing that caught me off guard the most. A lot of people stop working for the county and then want to go back to work for the county. And they ask, what's going to happen to my pension payments? The main rule is you've got to have that 30-day break in service or you're not really gone. If you come back fewer than 30 days, as far as we're concerned, you didn't leave. But if you've got that 30-day break in service, then your payments will start. Then if you want to come back to work for the county, you want to keep it below 1,000 hours in a calendar year. We consider that part-time, and you can work part-time and draw your CERF pension. But if you get to 1,000 hours or above, that's full-time. And Missouri doesn't want you working full-time and drawing your pension. That's called double dipping. It's allowed in some states. It is not allowed in Missouri. So if you get to 1,000 hours or above, your pension payment would be suspended until you retire a second time. And then your new pension amount would reflect both those periods of service. I noticed in the registrations for this call, a buddy of mine down in Greene County who's under that very situation. He had worked, he left, He came back in an elected position, in fact, and so his pension was suspended. It will kick in again when he retires another time, and the new amount will reflect both amounts. If you receive a pension payment in the month that you return to work, it has to be returned to CERF. Go to the next slide, please. All right, we have talked so far about what happens when you retire, but I'm going to talk a little bit about what happens while you're still employed. This is just good information for everyone to be aware of. While you're employed with CERF, there's a $10,000 death benefit in effect. So if you were to die and you're on the county payroll, we will pay $10,000 to whoever you listed as your beneficiary or beneficiaries. Please keep that information updated. I'm begging you. There have been cases where there's a divorce and a remarriage. The information never got updated. The participant dies and the ex-spouse gets the money. So if you've had any life-changing events, please update your $10,000 death benefit with us. You can do it through the mail, you can do it online, however you want to do it, but please keep it updated. Just because you changed that information with CERF pension does not mean you changed it with CERF savings or logger pension or any other benefits you might have with your county. We don't record keep each other's plans. CERF record keeps the CERF pension plan only. So that if you say, I did this form once, why am I having to do it again? Well, it may be that you're needing to update it for the CERF savings side also. If you're married invested, if you were to die and you're still employed and you've got those 8 years in, your spouse is entitled to a 50% survivor benefit. So half of what you would have gotten. If you're single invested and you were to pass away, your beneficiary would receive a refund of contributions you had been paying into the CERF pension plan. So again, please keep all of these beneficiaries up to date. If you do have death benefit questions, call Nancy on our office. She is great to talk to. She is glad to walk you through it and help you as much as you can. I have covered a lot of information, Connie, and I don't know if any questions have come in. I will tell you, let's go to the last slide. If we were doing this in person, you would have had to sit through 1 or 2 magic or juggling tricks. So we've spared you that at least. But we do want questions. If you think of them now and you want to pass them along, that's great. If you think of something later, contact us, call us, email us, whatever. We want you making good decisions. And I talked a lot, and I know you're not going to remember everything I said. That booklet that I emailed you has a lot of the answers in it. Our website has tons of information on it. I encourage you just to go there and look around. So appreciate your patience so much. I know I've talked a lot. We are so grateful to Empower for providing this venue so that we could continue giving future retirees some good information that they want. But I do not see any questions that have come up, so I'm going to kick it back to Connie and let her explain what's going to happen next.
Yeah. Excuse me. So I did get a couple of questions. If you want to take just a couple of minutes to respond to those. The first one is, can you please let them know what the website address is for CERF?
Sure. It's www.mocerf.org, mocerf.org.
Okay, and then there was a question regarding, are the forms that you referenced at the very beginning, and I guess throughout the presentation as well, Are those available online, and can these be completed electronically, or do they have to have a form?
Yes, the forms are available online. We do want you to print them and sign them and send them in to us. And again, some are going to be signed by your bank, some are going to be signed by your county payroll folks. So we do want you to print those and mail those in to us.
Okay. And then we have a question about the beneficiary information. And the question is, can the beneficiary be a trust?
Yes, the beneficiary can be a trust. That's absolutely fine.
Okay. And that is all the questions that I received via the chat function. So if anybody thinks of additional questions while we're on break or what have you, just go ahead and type those in, and I will take a look at that. And if there's additional questions before we kick it over to Robert and begin his portion of the presentation and of the seminar, we can ask Jim to respond to those